financial crisis. Anybody heard of that? You guys have studied that, I'm sure, ad nauseum. Have you ever sat down and tried to think about what caused it? Were there just a few things? What I've done, I actually wrote something that ended up being a study note on a couple of the exams, because at the time there wasn't anything out there. I think it'll get replaced before too long. And these aren't necessarily in any order, but these 5, plus I realized that I forgot to put leverage on here. These are what I came up with. The culture, ego risk, I call it. You know, the senior managers, that they're sure that they work their way to the top because they're smarter than everybody who's below them. And so if somebody challenges one of their decisions, they just say, well, you're wrong. And that's the end of the discussion. Or they make that culture so pervasive that the person doesn't even challenge that decision. They don't even come up and say, I think you're wrong. And we saw a lot of that. I'm sure you all are familiar with the quote from the gentleman who was CEO and chair of Citigroup at the time about the dancing. You know, that, yeah, there's going to be a big liquidity problem, but the music's going and, you know, we're still dancing. And well, the music stopped, and we see, I think when I looked yesterday, Citi was under $5 a share at this point, which I can remember when it was up around 50. I'm not sure if it went higher than that or not. So that's one, the ego risk, corporate governance, that type of thing. Tail risk is the second one. And you guys probably know a lot more about tail risk than I will ever know. I know it conceptually. You guys have studied it. When I was in school, you know, we looked at normal distributions, and you know, we looked a little bit at Poisson and a little bit beyond that. You guys are getting a lot more into distributions and seeing that, you know, like some of the work that Mary's done with regime switching, that the world doesn't always stay in a bell-shaped curve. You know, sometimes things happen that cause fat tails, you know, that cause more things to be in the tail than was expected. Third one is outsourced decision making. Who's ever let somebody else make a decision for them? Who did that with trillions of dollars? That's the problem here. It's not deciding what you're going to have for dinner and letting your boyfriend or girlfriend decide. This was essentially taking securitized assets and not doing your own research. Essentially not even learning how to do the research, and then saying, hey, the rating agencies, they said this was AAA, must be okay, without really even challenging it. And so, yeah, the rating agencies, they did some things that maybe they shouldn't have, but I put more of the blame on the investors who just blindly accepted those decisions. Misaligned incentives, that's a huge one. If you're a senior manager at an investment bank and you tell people you're going to have a bonus set up tied to stock options, you know, you've really leveraged your upside, but you don't take the downside. You know, you might get fired, but hey, if you've made, you know, millions of dollars first, you come out ahead. That's something that we're going to see be adjusted going forward. I don't think it's happened yet, but I'm still hopeful that it will. Mispriced risk. You have risks that people thought were normal, say, and maybe they were something different. Correlations that people thought were independent, but they weren't in all cases, and all of a sudden they started working together, and you had big problems. Leverage is the last one, and I forgot to put it up here, but leverage is just debt. You know, if you think back, have you guys studied long-term capital management from about 10 years ago? Some of you. They essentially had several Nobel Prize winners in economics. They had a gentleman who just recently imploded his third major fund. LTCM was one of them. One of them was Salomon Brothers, and now he imploded his own hedge fund. And people still keep giving him money. But LTCM, their theory really wasn't wrong. They essentially said, we're going to go out and find two risks that have a historical relationship and look for where they're just a little bit out of sync, or maybe a lot out of sync, and they'll revert to the mean. And if they had the time to wait for them to revert to the mean, that would have worked just fine. Unfortunately, they took 30-to-1 leverage. And so when the market worked against them, they were still right, but they were becoming more and more underwater, even though they were right. So the people who bought those assets from them did really well. We saw that in the early 1990s on the insurance side too, on the junk bond side, where they were too leveraged to make it through that cycle. And the people who bought those assets, the junk bonds in this case, did really well. Oh, by the way, if somebody has a question along the way, feel free to ask, and then I'll try to remember to repeat it for the folks on the webinar. Okay, there are positive case studies too. We hear just about anybody in Wall Street last year, but there's positive ones too. There was just an article in the Toronto paper here this morning about a new book out by the passengers that landed on the U.S. air flight in the Hudson River. That was a good thing. That was the thing where preparation, training, all those types of things combined to make a good result on a risky situation. The Tylenol scare. Only a few of us are probably old enough in this room. Rob probably remembers this. Well, I was in college, so at that time, everybody's seen the childproof, the protection caps and the seals at the top of medicine. To make it sealed so that nobody's tampered with it. The tamper-proof lids. That was came about from Tylenol. In Chicago, someone had gone into a store and put, I believe it was cyanide, into some of the Tylenol capsules. And Tylenol, the company that made it, immediately pulled nationally, internationally I believe too, all of that product. Just because they didn't know whether it was something in their factory or where it was. It turned out that it was not something in their factory, but they developed the tamper-proof lids at that time that have caught on and made all of our lives safer, because without that, you just never know when somebody's going to do something really stupid. And I kind of pointed at this before, but companies that don't make the front page often are doing wonderful enterprise risk management, looking at their risks, making sure that they manage their risks so that it's not something that they get surprised by. And then especially want to point out these guys, the Canadian financial services industry. You've read a lot over the last year about United States companies, about investment banks in the United States. You really haven't read much about the Canadian companies. Their relationship with the regulator is different than the relationship in the United States. And although I met with a couple of insurance company folks this morning who think maybe it's a little too much, it still was proven to, the regulator in Canada for financial services actually meets with the companies, with the boards. And I think that's just huge, and that we need to go to a model like that in the United States as well.